On August 14th, 1986, Frank Zappa appeared on Joan Lunden's chat show called Mother's Day that aired on the Lifetime Network. And he was in the midst of his free speech battle against the PMRC. And not only the stickering of record albums with parental warnings, but the proposed laws that were being voted upon in various states around the nation. And Frank was probably more influential in the 80s as a free speech fighter than a musician. I mean, not to say he didn't put out a lot of good music in the 80s, but societal impact, you can't argue with his free speech battle. Thank God for Frank Zappa. Thank God for intellect. Thanks God for common sense battling inane emotion. Can you imagine Frank dealing with how free speech has been clamped down in the digital era, in the era of, if you don't think like me, you're evil and you're an idiot and you're worthless and we're going to shun you and we're going to basically witch hunt you worse than anything that ever happened in Salem. Frank's probably happy he's dead. The rest of us aren't. But Frank would have been livid in this era. Thank God he was livid 36 years ago.
My next guest has been making music for 20 years. These days he's also making news. Frank Zappa is an outspoken opponent of a group that wants to have warning labels put on certain record albums so that parents can protect their children from hearing certain lyrics. But Frank, the father of 4, doesn't believe that's the best way to help our kids. And please welcome Frank Zappa. A crazy guy who did freak out. But now you're a father of 4 children. Why don't you start by telling us what are the ages of your children and tell us a little about them.
The ages are 18, 16, 12, and 6.
Oh, you have your hands full. Mm-hmm. Okay, 18 years old. That's Moon Unit, right?
Right.
And what is she doing?
Well, she has been on this television show called Fast Times at Ridgemont High. She was hired as a consultant first to help them figure out how teenagers talk. She really, that's what she was supposed to go out and come back and tell the writers. They would say, "No, what are the latest words to call somebody fat?" And she would go out and she would research and come back and tell the writers and then put it in the show. So then they put her in as a minor character in 7 of their episodes. She plays a girl named Barbara DeVilbiss.
I'm just dying to know. Do you know any of the words she came up with for fat?
No, I didn't. I'm not.
I try to keep up with how they're talking these days. It's sometimes hard. Okay, and also now Dweezil, he's getting into the industry too.
Yeah, Dweezil wants to be an actor. He started off wanting to be a baseball player, and then he changed to guitar, and he's making an album now. But he has an agent, and he's with ICM, and they've sent him out on a number of television shows and movies, and he's got one line in Pretty in Pink. Mm-hmm. But I think that has a lot to do with the fact that at that time Molly Ringwald was his girlfriend. So hey, get Dweezil in the movie.
And Amit, now Amit's 10, right?
No, he's 12.
12 years old, okay. And what's he into?
He's just passing through the ninja stage. He's just on the outside edge of the ninja stage, and he wants to be a singer. Now that he sees that his big brother is making an album, he actually sang on one of the songs on it.
Somebody told me, in fact, that he sang on the album and was really great.
He has a great voice. He will be a good singer, I think, and he's a natural entertainer because he's not shy. He likes to dance around, and he has he's not embarrassed about himself. You know, he'll be a fool for fun.
But what are the dynamics there when, you know, older brother brings little brother in, let's give him a song on the record, and all of a sudden little brother's great?
It wasn't quite like that.
Okay.
I mean, Dweezil didn't really say, let's get the little brother in to sing. Dweezil is a really great guitar player, and at the time that the basic tracks for the album were done, it came time to do the vocals, and Dweezil hadn't been singing too much, so I didn't know whether or not he could actually cut it. Turns out that he does have a good voice, and he sung on most of the songs on the record and pulled it off, but one of the ones was out of his range, and happened to be in the range that Amit could sing, so he sang that. So then we found out that 2 of the other ones might have been a little bit better for Moon to sing, so she sang two of them. So it's the only person who's not going to be on it is Diva, and she's very angry about that.
Oh, really? Because I was wondering what the dynamics would be. I mean, if there'd be any real competition or a little bit of resentment going on when they're all doing this together.
I would say that Moon and Dweezil are very close, but there is a certain amount of friction between Dweezil and Ahmet, which is not to say that they don't like each other, but they're not as close as the two older ones.
And Diva, she didn't get to sing, but she's 10 years old.
No, Diva is 6.
Okay.
Diva is 6. And she will eventually get to be on somebody's record because she's not shy either. She's looking toward show business.
A little born performer?
Yeah.
Can I just ask you, I mean, everyone would kill me if I didn't ask you, why did you name them unusual names?
Well, Diva, the name Diva refers to a lead opera singer. And when she was born, she was the loudest baby there. And I said, you know, that's a good name for her. And Ahmet was named after Ahmet Erdogan, who is a guy I know who runs a record company. And Dweezil, that name was different. That's a made-up name. And my wife has a little stunted toe, which was nicknamed Dweezil at one time, and it was so cute. So I said, okay, we'll call him Dweezil.
Does Dweezil know he's named after a little stunted toe?
Yeah.
Yeah?
But
okay.
the story about Dweezil's name is when Dweezil was born with natural childbirth, you know, when let's go be natural. So the hospital that would allow you to have natural childbirth had some very strange ideas about what you could name children. And when I took my wife in to have the baby, what's the baby's name going to be? Filling out the form, they begged her not to call this child Dweezil. I mean, it's like, we're not going to let you have the baby if you're going to call it that. Furthermore, they demanded to know what religion we were. And all this is a prerequisite to entering this hospital. It was very strange, and it was a last-minute thing. So the answer to the two questions were, in the religious category, my wife wrote musician. And as far as the name went, at that point, I rattled off the names of 4 of the guys who were in my band at that time. Ian, Donald, Calvin, Euclid. And that's the name that went on the birth certificate. But we knew we were going to call him Dweezil. So for years, his legal name was Ian, Donald, Calvin, Euclid, Zappa.
No. And so you decided...
But we had always called him Dweezil. When he got to be about 7 years old and realized that the hospital had forced us into this compromising position, demanded to have his name legally changed to Dweezil. We hired a lawyer, had it done. His name is Dweezil Zappa. He wanted it, he's got it. It's on the, on the documents now.
Well, you know, I think the reason probably why some people would say we don't want you to do that is because they would be afraid that it would, you know...
Cause ridicule to the child?
Yeah, cause ridicule.
The fact of the matter is, and this still remains true, it's the last name that will get you in trouble, not the first name.
Whoa. Do you think that Zappa would get them into trouble?
Well, I think there's probably more controversy connected to the last name than there would be to the first name, and that's been borne out.
Okay, I want to ask you more about life growing up in the Zappa household, and we'll break for just a moment, and then we'll come back and we'll talk more with Frank Zappa. We are back now talking with Frank Zappa. You've been quoted as saying that you're probably a lot more conservative than the people who watch you on TV right now.
Probably.
You said, I should worry more about my kids going over to someone else's house rather than them worrying about their kids coming to my house.
And that's true, because especially where we live in Hollywood, the use of drugs in people's homes is something to be concerned about. We don't have any in our house, and I don't like the idea of the possibility of my kids going over to somebody else. You know, you meet a kid in school, it's a nice little kid, you don't know what their parents are doing or what's going on at the house, and that, to me, is of more concern than somebody sending their kid over to my house to play.
Drugs are obviously one of the big concerns. Another thing that a lot of parents are concerned about these days, as you well know, are the lyrics that are in rock records. Now, you've taken off all the outlandish stuff, you put on your suit, you went in front of Congress, and you said, I don't want this to happen.
Well, you know, there's a number of good reasons for that, because what they did at that Senate hearing was a kangaroo court, and it was really just political maneuvering. It was a political opportunity, and the thing that's pathetic about what these women did was they've made this a career out of it. They're still in business. They had this bogus press conference on November 1st where they got the record industry to agree to put certain labels on certain records, but the agreement has no teeth. The agreement says that parents will have no role in determining what is explicit, that those artists who have control over their album covers are free to ignore the understanding. So it's full of holes. There's no way they're going to get a uniform rating system or a warning system on there. It just will not be adhered to. The other thing is that they have mentioned that they're going to stay in business for another year to monitor compliance with the agreement. They've moved to larger offices in Virginia. I still get all of their fundraising and propaganda stuff in the mail. It's what they're going to do is sometime around election time in November, they're going to make some more noise. This is
all right. Well, forgetting
politics.
how they're going about it, though, what about the actual issue? I mean, you know, we have our movies are rated. I mean, we can see what's in a can of soup. We can see what's in our medicines.
Yeah.
Why shouldn't parents be able to see what's in? I mean, if you don't want your kid to go to a movie that's got explicit material in it, it's rated R, and they can't get in without your permission. What about a record?
As far as words go, I don't, you remember the one, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me?
Yeah.
The premise that they have based the complaint on is that if a person hears a song about something, it is going to generate antisocial behavior. And they've carried this to such a ridiculous extreme to suggest that the hearing of a song that mentions suicide will make you kill yourself. The hearing of a song that talks about violent activity will engender violent activity. And some people have gone so far as to say that music causes murder. And there's a law that they're trying to put on the books in the state of Maryland, which I'm going to go down to fight on Tuesday, where the woman who has put this forth to the House of Delegates states that rock music is the single greatest cause of incest in the home. Where are these people getting these statistics? It's, if you, bad facts make bad law. And here we have a situation that goes beyond record rating. This one, they want to pass a law.
They want to pass a law that says, basically, I think that goes more than record rating. It says that a kid then can't go into a store and buy that record.
That's right. And
if it's got an explicit rating on it. But what about the parent who says, hey, you know, my kid is feeling down these days with everything going on. They're doing drugs every now and then. They just broke up with their girlfriend, and I don't want him, and when he's in that depressed state, to put on a record by Ozzy Osbourne that says suicide is the only way out, don't you know the only way out, that it could just be that one thing that glorifies it enough to say, hey man, it's okay. That's the concern of parents. Where do you draw the line? Where do you let parents have a little
That responsibility
control?
belongs in the home, not in the hands of government, not in the hands of committees, not in the hands of anybody outside of your home. It's a matter of individual choice, and it's your responsibility. If your child is depressed and you think your child wants to commit suicide, no amount of record rating or labeling is going to help that child.
But you say that this choice is in the home, but
right.
But we have to let the parents have some way to make that choice. And if
how
they
about
have,
just
there
listening
are
to the
millions
record?
Of records.
Listen to the record and decide for
working
yourself.
Parents today, Frank.
How are you willing to give up that responsibility and let somebody else make the decision for you? I think that would be a very lazy
How about some
parent.
help in making that, in making those
What
choices?
kind of help? I mean,
The help is having a label.
It's like having somebody chew your food for you.
No. The help, though, I mean, I've got to take the other side of it here.
Go
for
ahead,
you.
but it's still, it's lazy.
The parents say there are tons of records out there. I just want to be able to see. Does this have something in it that is so explicit that the industry has decided that I should take a listen to it?
Suppose,
and maybe it's okay.
But wait a minute, if the industry is making the decision, you are presuming that community standards of Hollywood, California, or New York City are adequate for your home, which may be someplace else with a different set of standards.
Well, I'm sure most parents would want the same type of group that rates movies to rate the records and not just the industry.
Well, then
itself,
what are they willing
choice.
to pay to set up this censorship board? I mean, is the pleasure worth the pain? You're talking about having a uniform code of doing this stuff. I think that it is a fantasy. You know, you're spending money and spinning your wheels over something that really does not deliver the type of social evil that has been talked about. The terror that has been raised on this simply doesn't exist.
Okay, I'm sure we have some questions from our audience out here. We're going to break for a minute. We'll have some questions from our studio audience, so don't go away. questions from our studio audience for Frank Zappa. I think you've got a question right here.
Mr. Zappa, since we're not talking about banning, but just labeling, what's the danger? Since we do get ingredients on foods and so on, where do you see this leading?
Well, if you get a bad ingredient in your food, or you get something that might be harmful to your health, I could see that. But I don't think that any literary material will be harmful to your health. They're talking about words, protecting you from words. And I just don't think that there's any reason to protect you from words.
But Mr. Zappa, we have doctors on this show all the time that will tell you that teenagers are going through a very depressed, emotional time. They can really get down. They're still children, really, in many, many ways. And that, I think, is why parents want to protect them from anything that might, harm them.
Then those parents should rethink their position, and also those doctors should too, because I've heard some of this medical testimony, and I don't buy it. I've also heard some conflicting medical testimony, including one from a psychiatrist in Canada who I did a show with, that made an interesting observation. Those parents who try to look and act young and do young things like listen to rock music with their kids tend to drive their children toward more extreme forms of rock music. In other words, with the trend toward being a swinging young parent these days, when you sit and listen to rock music at home, your kids do not want to listen to your kind of rock music. They don't want to be like you. They want to be different. And so as you try and act like the young, cool person, you are sending your children into
So what do we
Leatherland.
do? I mean, we live in an imperfect world. The kids are, and let's face it, you don't think teenagers are emotional?
Of course they are, but let's be realistic about what words do. If we are to live in fear of words, well, you might as well just throw the Constitution away.
All right, we have another question here.
I was going to ask you, though, wouldn't you agree that the teenagers in an emotional state, though, could be affected negatively by a rock record of some kind, something that says suicide's the way out or something like that?
Well, I think teenagers are affected in different ways by different types of stimuli. And if you say that a person could experience a negative effect, who's to say that what they hear on a rock record is more or less affecting than what they see on the news or see from example of the way their parents conduct themselves? That's the depressing thing to a kid, I think. If you're growing up in a world where you think you have no future, that is not because Ozzy Osbourne says suicide solution.
But in the midst of a teenage suicide epidemic around our country,
it's not an epidemic.
Well, it's happening more and more than it's ever happened before.
Here's my statistic.
Okay.
The largest single incidence of suicide in the last decade was not caused by rock music. It was caused by religion, and we're talking about Jonestown. More people die as a result of having that kind of strange religious influence on them than will ever die from any rock and roll or other kind of
that's another
record.
program at another time.
Yeah, but if you talk an epidemic of suicide, there was how many people died at Jonestown? No Ozzy Osbourne there.
We all want to do the very best we can do as being parents, and I think a lot of the different parents always have different ideas on how they want to raise their children, but we thank you today for your ideas, and we thank you for your questions. That's it today for Mother's Day. As you can see, these are very controversial issues, so keep in touch with what's going on. We're here to try to help you do that in this ever-changing world. And if you have strong feelings one way or the other, get involved. I'm Joan Lunden. Mother's Day guest.
Thanks for watching Cleveland Live Music. It's awfully bright out here. I'd click on another one of my videos. Quit looking into the sun. Your mother told you not to do that. Please hit the subscribe button. And if you want to support the channel more, there's GoFundMe and Patreon information in the video descriptions. Ooh, ooh!